What's up, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the QB Factory Reboot brought to you by SB Nation and Bleeding Green Nation. We're recording on Tuesday, April 5th. So happy April. Spring is here. It's not really feeling like it yet, but it's here. And we
It's
are 23 days away from the NFL draft. I
yeah,
think that's
according to
I think
my
that's it.
trusty calendar, that's what it looks like.
That's
23
what it looks
days.
like. It's literally right around the corner. Time is flying. And so the coverage continues. On today's episode, we're going to continue to talk about the QB rankings. And we also have some really, really big news to get into. We're going to unpack the Eagles Saints blockbuster trade that went down on Monday. And we're going to share our thoughts. Who won the trade? What are our thoughts on the trade? How does this impact Jalen Hurts? But I am your host, Raichele Privette. And like always, I am joined by my amazing co host, the one and only QB expert, Mark Schofield, who just knows everything and he's the best. But before we even get started, don't forget to rate, don't forget to leave a review, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. At Twitter, you can follow us at BGN_radio. And on Instagram, you can follow us at Bleeding Green Insta. But yes, Mark, first and foremost, did you watch the game last night?
I didn't. I
Oh, man.
didn't. I basically, Rachel, I just kind of followed along because I'm working. I'm finalizing my top
Okay.
16 wide receivers for the draft for USA
Ooh.
Today because Doug Farrar and I, we split up positions and we do top 11. But every year, about like halfway through watching receivers, I go back to Doug and I'm like, I can't narrow it to 11. And so
Mm,
last year I did top 14. This year I'm doing top 16. And,
okay.
and so I was right. I was finishing that up because that's coming out, I think, Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay.
And I was just kind of like, I need to do something that's not sports.
I feel
So
you.
I like, and honestly, like weirdly enough, because of the draft and everything,
Hmm.
I don't watch a ton of college basketball anymore. I used to
I
love
don't
it.
either
Like I
until
used
March
to love
Madness
it.
comes around.
My
When March
brother in
Madness
law,
comes around, I'm on the bandwagon. I'm on it.
yeah, yeah. My brother-in-law he went to UNC undergrad. He's a huge UNC
Oh,
guy. So he and his mom were there. Like
that
they
is so
were at
cool.
the game Saturday night, and then they were at the game last night. So I have another buddy who's also friends with my brother-in-law. He and his wife were at Chapel Hill. They went to the Dean Dome to watch the game.
Okay.
There. So, but yeah, apparently I missed a good game.
You did. And I'm like an early bird. I'm sleep. If you know me, I am sleep every night by 10 and 10 p.m. Like I go to sleep early, but I stayed up and I watched the entire thing and it was really, really good. Of course, the team that I wanted to win, UNC, they lost. So it was kind of
Yeah.
sad, but it was a hard fought game the entire time and a really historic comeback. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I thought it was like I checked it on Twitter. I was like, oh man, UNC's running away with this. All right, well, I guess I don't need to turn it on. And then my wife and I were like watching TV, and she's like, "Do you want to turn this game on?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm fine." So I guess I should have watched it though.
You should have, but it is what it is. You saw all the highlights. Everything need to know is right on social media.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's the beauty of social media. That's the one good thing about it. Like if you want
yes,
to follow along with something that happens, whether it's a college basketball game, a Oscars moment that
yep,
apparently nobody will stop talking about,
yeah,
like you just need Twitter. You just need
yeah.
Twitter.
Well,
So
that's not what we're here for. We are here to talk Eagles. We're this trade. Like, let's
yeah.
get into freaking trade. But first, I'm sure you have your movie quotes. I have song lyrics, or do you have lyrics? Whatever.
I do have a movie quote because when we were flipping shadows, we came across A Few Good Men,
Okay.
which is a classic, and obviously the old lawyer in me loves it. And there are many quotes from that movie which are fantastic. There's the "Oh, you strenuously object." Oh, that's how it works. You strenuously object, Your Honor. No, I strenuously object. That's always a good one. The random shot from Jack Nicholson at Lieutenant Weinberg is always a good one. But then there's the moment where Tom Cruise is drunk and he thinks the case is going away from them. And he's having this fight with Demi Moore, and he's just like, shoot, let's play. Should we or should we not follow the advice of the galactically stupid? Which is just an incredible line. I mean, and my wife and I, we still quote that all the time. Never at each other. Maybe once it was directed at me when she was asking if, but it's a fantastic line. And as we get closer to the draft and teams make some, so we say, curious decisions, it's a good reminder that playing the game, should we or should we not follow the advice of the galactically stupid, it is always a fun contest for everybody to partake in.
I like that. I like that. I chose movie quote. A big Disney fan, and I was torn between two different quotes, but the one that I went with It says it's from Brave, the movie Brave.
Yeah.
And the main character Merida, she says, "You control your destiny. You don't need magic to do it, and there are no magical shortcuts to solving your problems." And Howie Roseman definitely
Yep.
took things into his own hands in this trade. Making this decision, I think, was a really good decision. I am here for it. And I think that that shows that he sees the value in future picks, something that I don't think a lot of teams, see. So the fact that he was able to do this, I don't think that the Eagles lost anything from this. I was happy that they had 3 first-round picks originally. I was like, yes, they're going to do this. But everybody else, seems like it was a consensus, knew that they were going to get rid of one. So he did what he had to do. There was no magic to it. It was just, he he controls the Eagles' destiny, and I think that he is setting them up for the long run in a good position.
I love that. And I'm a big fan of this move. I mean, I'm curious your thoughts on it. From where I sit, it's kind of like, in a way, isn't this kind of what we hoped they would do?
Yeah.
We had talked on this show about adding a first-round pick in next year's draft, because that gives you your Jalen Hurts hedge, right? Like, we all want Jalen Hurts to get to where he needs to be as a quarterback. We all want to see him take those steps forward. And we've talked a lot on this show about what he needs to do to get there. We've talked with other people about what he needs to do to get there. And you hope that you don't need to use picks on quarterbacks next year. But if you have to, as we're seeing right now, you might need multiple picks in the first round to go get that guy. You might need 2 picks in the first round. You might need 2 picks in the first round plus an extra pick in the third round, or an extra pick in a future second rounder, which they got in this draft, in this trade. I mean, and so I think it gives them that hedge. And it also, you're still sitting at 15 and 18.
Good.
You're going to get very good players with those 2 picks. Like, you could go in a number of different directions. And we can talk about guys like Devin Lloyd or Trevor Walker or whoever you want them to draft. They're still in range to get those players. And so I think it's that rare move where I think they, quote, won.
Yes.
But I think the Saints put themselves in a position to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Like, they have positions that they could address. There's been some speculation that maybe they have to address tackle, or maybe they are taking 16 and 19 and looking at 5. Because I think right now, if you're a team that wants to draft a quarterback, you got to get to 5. That's the spot. Because Carolina's sitting there at 6. They didn't trade for Garoppolo. They didn't trade for Baker. They have no picks until like 147. So it's not like they have a lot of draft capital to move up even more. They're hoping against hope that Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett or somebody they like is there at 6. Yeah. So if you want to get one of those guys, you're going to get to the Giants at 5. And the Giants have picks at 5 and 7. And so maybe the Saints are like, we're going to put 2 players together, 16 and 19, 2 picks together. We're going to try to get to 5, get ahead of Carolina, draft our guy. And now Carolina Panthers end up drafting QB2 at 6. And the Eagles are going to see quarterbacks come off the board at 6, at 5. And you're going to get good players falling down. So from where I sit as somebody watching this from an Eagles viewpoint, I love it for Philadelphia.
Same. And I think both teams had to have a motive going into this situation. I think that the Eagles, looking at the graphic that Adam Schefter tweeted out, first and foremost, when he first tweeted this out, I think everybody was kind of like, what the F is this? It was so many numbers. My head was like, I had to read it and read it and read it. So when they tweeted out the graphic, I was like, thank you. It helped so much just to understand it, because it was so much going on. And like looking at the graphic, the Eagles received, like you said, number 18 pick, number 101, that's the third round pick, 237, which is 7th round, and then they get the 2023 first round and the 2024 second round pick. The Saints received the Eagles number 16 pick, which they originally had number 19 pick, and number 194, which is 6th round pick. So like you said, the Eagles didn't lose anything from this. I think we all knew that they weren't keeping the 3 first round picks from the jump, so the fact that they are at number 15 and number 18 now, like nothing really changed. They're still in really good position. But like I was saying, I think that this tells you that the Saints have their eye on somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't think that they would have gave all of this up if they weren't in desperate need of a player that they know is going to be a game changer. So
and that's
what they were doing.
That's the other thing, Raichele, with this. This looks like, with everything that the Eagles got, you usually pay that quarterback premium, right? When you're making a trade to come up to get a quarterback, you pay a little bit more. It's kind of the cost of doing business. And when you're seeing them give up a 23 first, a 24 second, the pick in the third round, the 7th and the 6th, that late round pick swap, I always kind of like brush that aside. But when you're talking about this other stuff that they're, giving up, just to basically add a pick in a couple of spots ahead of where they're at, that's a lot, and so that makes you feel like, yes, this is that quarterback premium. Now, like I said, others have said, you know what? They've got other needs. Like they could be addressing tackle with these picks, right? Like they've got a need on the offensive line. And maybe they're looking at, I know Darren Orlovsky said the Chargers at 17 might address tackle. They drafted Rashawn Slater, obviously the first round last year, but they need a right tackle. And if you're thinking you got to get a tackle, you might want to get ahead of them at 17. So it's a possibility they paid that to go get a tackle that might be tackle 4 at this class at that point. Or you're paying the premium to give yourself a shot to get to 5. And I think that's more likely. Of course, the monkey wrench in all of this potentially is what Detroit does it too. Because a lot of people have come around to the idea that cover the lines that, look, you know what, this idea that we're going to take a quarterback at 32 or later in the first round or come up a couple spots, just draft the guy at 2. And so if Willis does indeed come off the board at 2, which again, I don't know if you would do it, but it seems like you might, then New Orleans is probably like, okay, well, are we happy coming up to 5 for QB2? Or do we just say, all right, well, we'll see what happens. And maybe a quarterback they like gets into that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 range, and they can move up again for that player. We'll see. I mean, but I think with what they paid, it feels quarterback adjacent.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm stuck in this place. Okay, one, there's so many different ways different directions I want to go with this. So I'm going to go the Jalen Hurts route.
Yeah. I
think that, I was seeing so many different tweets talking about like how this is, insurance and this is, a safety net for the Eagles because they know that bear with me, I'm getting over a cold. They know that Jalen Hurts, they're not sold on him yet. And we've talked about this. We talk about this every single week. He hasn't really proven himself yet. I think he did a good job this past season. When people ruled him out, he did a lot better than they expected, making it to the playoff. That was an accomplishment. But the Eagles are pretty much saying with this, now that they have the first round pick for next season, and you talk about that draft class all the time, Spencer Rattler, you talk about, Bryce Young, they know that if Jalen Hurts does not do what he has to do this season and make these strides that he needs to make and these drastic improvements, they're going to be good regardless because they have the draft capital that they need in order to get a quarterback from the better class, which is 2023.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the approach. You've given yourself that path. And we talk a lot about how the more pathways you have to success, whether it's in a game, in roster construction, whatever, the better off you'll be. And Howie Roseman talked about that at the Combine. He said, look, the draft, it's not an exact science, but the more bites of the apple you have, the more picks that you have, the more likely in the end you'll get a better draft class as a result. If you have 8 picks and hit on 4, you've got 4 good players. If you have 3 picks and hit on 1, you've got 1 good player. The more picks you have, the better off your odds will be.
Yeah.
The problem, though, is the grass always looks greener, and this quarterback class is a great example of that because we're all sitting there right now. We're like, what do you do with Malik Willis? What do you do with Kenny Pickett? What do you do with Desmond Ridder? What do you do with these guys? Next year's class looks great. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Spencer Rattler, Phil Jakovic, Will Levis. This is going to be a much better class next year. It doesn't always work out that way. I mean, this time last year, it was, oh, man, this quarterback class, we're getting 5 in the top 15. That's great. Teams that passed on it, though, they might be thinking Spencer Rattler is going to be great. Sam Howell is going to be great. They didn't work out. It didn't pan out that way. And I'm also reminded of in 2017 when myself and others were saying, hey, this Patrick Mahomes guy is pretty good. You might want to look at him. A lot of people were saying, I don't know, man. This kid coming out next year is going to be fantastic in this 2018 class. And they were talking about Josh Allen. They weren't talking about Lamar Jackson. They were talking about Sam Darnold. Things change over time. And so right now, it is fantastic that on paper they have the ammunition potentially, if they have to go get a quarterback. And we expect that CJ Stroud might be that guy or Bryce Young or any of these players, but you never know. And that's sort of the uncertainty about a move like this. Like you've given yourself that future capital if you need it, but you don't know what might be there when you get around to using it.
I was like, the one thing that I am taking away from this, which is going to be pressure on Hurts regardless, is regardless of what everyone has to say, this was like fate for him. Like the Eagles wanted Russell Wilson at one point that fell through. Like he didn't want to come to Philly. So it's like dodged a bullet in that way. And now the fact that this is happening, they've already been vocal about, Jalen Hurts is our guy and they've said it. But now that this has happened, it's really proved and showed us that Jalen Hurts is the guy this year. Now it's up to him to make those drastic improvements and really, really prove that he's the guy. But I think that just tells us and proves us that he was supposed to get this opportunity. Like he was supposed to get this chance this year to prove, if he is capable of doing what he has to do to be the franchise guy. So to me, this is all like, it was supposed to play out like this. Things have happened in order for it to work out this way. So
it's a great example of like, when coaches and general managers like talk, like, yeah, listen to what they have to say, but then watch what they actually do, right? Because they're telling us at the combine, Sirianni's saying it, Roseman's saying it, like, yeah, Jalen Hurts is our guy, but behind the scenes, they're trying to get Russell Wilson, which you can understand. And that might have been coming from up top. The owner has said many times, like, he's the guy that sort of got away, and we regret that we didn't get a chance to land him. Now you have an opportunity to explore the trade. It doesn't fall through. It falls through. You don't get able to do it. And so what's your next move? Instead of moving up with the 3 first-round picks you have to potentially get to 5 to draft a quarterback, they trade one of them away for next year, which is a sign that, okay, well, we couldn't get Wilson, so now we're going to stick with Hurts. We're going to give him this year, put talent around him with those 2 picks, and if it doesn't pan out, now we've got 2 picks in next year's first round, we can then be aggressive and go get our guy. Having said that, I could be galactically wrong, They could still decide, hey, we're going to take 15, we're going to take 18, and we're going to go up. Could that happen? I'd give it maybe a 5% chance of happening, but maybe. I mean, I think it's more likely that I've seen some Eagles fans and Eagle Twitter speculate about a later round quarterback, like round 4 or something. And, maybe if a guy falls, but I think it's far more likely that they're going to just build around Hurts this year, add premier players, talented players at a number of different spots, and then see what happens. I mean, you've still got basically 5 picks in the top 100, because you get to pick up 101, that one from the Saints. You've got 15, 18, 51, 83, and 101. That's a lot of talent. And with 3 picks in that 50 to 100 range, you're going to get good players in that range. I think that's kind of the sweet spot of this draft. And so I think it's overall a very good move.
Howie Roseman really deserves a hand clap.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely does.
Yeah. But I was like, do you think, because, right before this, he signed his contract extension. So I was like, I don't know. It's just, this is a really good place to be in. I don't think this erases some of the stuff that he's done in the past by any means, but I think that this is a good place to be in. And now we just have to have faith that he doesn't screw up the draft. Like they have 10 picks right now, total. And like you said, the 5 of them, that's like top 100. Yeah. So,
I think he also, look, I'm trying to find out exactly. Okay. So Ben Baldwin tweeted out last night after this trade. He's on Twitter at Ben B. Baldwin. So the Eagles basically turned Carson Wentz into a 1st round pick for next year, a 2nd round pick for 2024, and a 3rd round pick for this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because they basically flipped with the pick that they got from the Eagles. That's pretty impressive. I mean, and it's also kind of crazy to think about what teams have gotten for Carson Wentz over the past couple of moves here, past couple of weeks, because not only what Roseman did, but what Chris Ballard did after he just obliterated the guy at the combine, then turns around and gets potentially a pair of 2nd round picks for him, or the 2nd, 3rd round pick potentially. And so good for those guys, I guess.
And I've also seen people talk about it the same way with this year. Like last year worked out really, really well for us. Every week we were tracking what is going down with the Colts, because we wanted to see how that draft pick was going to pan out. And I've seen people talk about that with this year's, with next year's in regards to the Saints picks that we got. like, oh, well, how do you know that it's going to pan out that way for you guys? And it's kind of just like we're going to be literally doing the same thing, track it every week. How are the Saints doing? Because we're going to want it, to work out in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, if the Saints have a really bad year,
yeah,
I mean that could be a pick as early as like the 70s.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah. Did you see the tweet that Ian Rappaport tweeted out when he said he was explaining the rationale for both the Saints and the Eagles? But for the Eagles part, it said they now don't have to pay 3 first fully guaranteed contracts, get an extra one next year, either for a quarterback or to build around a quarterback. So what were your initial thoughts when you saw that tweet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really smart point because, that also gets to the idea of they probably weren't going to use all 3 of these picks anyway. It's because you're now going to have 3 players at first round contracts. Like, that's a lot. And especially if you're thinking about what if you hit on 2 of them, now you're thinking about potentially, 2 second-year contracts for guys that you drafted in the first round that you now have to pay big contract extensions to. Like, there's some of the math that goes into it as well. Now you've sort of spread that out where, say you hit on these 2 this year and you hit on the 2 guys next year, or you turn that into a quarterback, you've at least spread out the allocation of that space over a longer period of time rather than like sort of front loaded into this year.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought that made a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it that way, but the tweet makes a lot of sense. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to why, as it stands right now, the Eagles have, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I mean, they've got 10 picks.
Yeah, 10 picks.
And I don't think they're making all 10 picks. I mean, because you're probably going to flip some of these later ones and move around a little bit because that's 10 guys that you've got to at least give some initial contracts to. And they're probably going to whittle that down a little bit more. But as we started at the outset, like, you'll have 10 bites of the apple. And so you've got an opportunity to add some guys, especially on day 3, where sometimes drafts are won and lost on the 3rd day of the draft when everybody's moved on to the Masters.
Like I said, I think this is a good place to be. I can't stop but smiling, just thinking they're in a good position. You could be down and out. Some of these other teams are down and out. So the fact that they have this much draft capital to work with, cap space, the Eagles are in a really good position. And this could be like a upward trajectory for them if they do right by this.
Yeah. So. I mean, we could be Bears fans and they have 6 picks and they don't pick until 39. And it's not like they're the Rams who at least won a Super Bowl when they don't pick again. But try being a Bears fan right now, friends.
Yeah, not fun. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that at all. But we're going to take a really quick break. And when we get back from the break, we're going to dive into QB rankings. So make sure you guys don't go anywhere. We will be right back. And we're back. So, Mark, you wrote an article literally recently, and you were, pretty much looking at the QB draft prospects and ranking them. So we're going to get into that. And I know that you started the article talking about Carson Wentz. We had already talked about Carson Wentz going to the Washington Commanders. So, and how that move has pretty much like told us what we need to know about this draft class. So let's get into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, it's something we've touched on here, which is the NFL has some questions. They have some healthy skepticism, shall we say, about this quarterback class. It's because we've seen teams that need a guy to start week 1, teams that had a need for a starting quarterback for the first week of the NFL season that's coming up, went and got veterans. Atlanta, they trade away Matt Ryan. They bring in Marcus Mariota. Indianapolis, they trade away Carson Wentz. They add Matt Ryan. Obviously, Washington, they're sitting at 11 overall in the draft, potentially with a shot to draft any of these guys, and they trade for Carson Wentz a week after Chris Ballard torched him at the combine. And not just traded for him, they gave up 2 picks, one of which could increase in value, and took on his entire salary. On down the line, teams that were in position to potentially draft a quarterback and play him early said, no, we're going to sign Mitchell Trubisky instead. That tells you, I think, what you need to know. It's similar to what we were just talking about. Yeah, listen to what coaches and general managers say, but then watch what they do.
Yeah.
Howie Roseman, other general managers, other coaches. Yeah, this is a good quarterback class. Like, there's some really talented kids in here. Oh, by the way, we're going to try to trade for Russell Wilson. Oh, by the way, we are going to trade for Russell Wilson. Oh, by the way, we're going to trade for Carson Wentz after Chris Ballard just obliterated his value and left everybody in Indianapolis wondering if the Colts could even get a day 3 pick for him, or if they would have to give up picks in addition to trading him away, and instead Washington gave up what they did and took on his contract. So, I mean, I think that's sort of, I've talked a little bit about like sort of these seismic events that have impacted how people and how the league is feeling about the quarterback position in general. And this Wentz move is sort of one of those where it's like, they've got some questions. Now, do I feel they're warranted? Maybe with respect to, say, week 1. Like, maybe if you're going to sit back and look at this quarterback class on the whole and ask yourself, can any of these guys start right away? I don't know about that. But to use our usual, like, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, like, timeline, I think there are guys in this class that could play by, like, Halloween. And so, you know, maybe signing Marcus Mariota as a stopgap makes some sense, but trading for Carson Wentz, if you might want to address quarterback, I don't know about that one.
Right. So let's get into the rankings.
Rankings, which are sure to be wrong. And I can sort of start this way. Like the consensus top 6, everybody has sort of in this order. I mean, in that group at the top, like there might be some stragglers. Like my buddy Matt Waldman, I think he has Skylar Thompson a little bit higher than even I do, and I thought I was high on him. But most people have in some order. I'm going to try to do it alphabetically. I think I've got it memorized by now. Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Carson Strong, Malik Willis. Like they have those guys in some order in their top 6. And if you want to tell me any of those guys in your mind is like QB1, all right, I could see a case for it. Like Matt Corral, athletic, quick release, like cut down on the interceptions. He had 11 interceptions in just 2 games 2 years ago. He had 5 against LSU and 6 against Arkansas, which is just like, I couldn't imagine ever throwing 6 interceptions a game. Not that I, didn't have the ability to do that. I certainly had the ability to throw 6 interceptions a game. My coaches never gave me a chance. They pulled me after 2. But cut down on the interceptions, certainly a talented guy. Sam Howell, most efficient, productive deep ball thrower in this class. Certainly fits a vertical passing game. And he showed last year he was their second leading rusher when they lost Javonte Williams to the NFL and Michael Carter and DME Brown. It's like, okay, I can run the football. You know, and I even compared him to Jalen Hurts. He reminds me a lot of Hurts, the ability to throw downfield and the ability as a runner. I think there's PFF's Mike Renner has him as QB1. Okay, fine. I get it. Kenny Pickett, you see the strides he made last year. You see how he took Pitt, which was an okay team. They won an ACC championship. Like you see him win some big games. You see him throw well on the move. The questions, response to pressure, and of course the hand size that's sort of lingering out there. I like Desmond Ridder a lot. A lot of people really like Desmond Ridder. There are some people that have him as QB1, and I can understand it. You can see it from the mental perspective. You can see the athleticism, 4.52 speed, which we saw on the field on some designed runs and things like that. The sort of hand up there is accuracy. Now he's gotten better. 3 seasons ago it was bad. 2 seasons ago it was pretty shaky. This year it was better. But you got to put the football where it needs to be when it needs to be there, and that's kind of part of the job. Carson Strong might be QB1 10 years ago.
Oh, I was about to say, really?
He's Drew. In my mind, he's Drew Bledsoe.
Okay.
He's got a huge arm, but whether it's because of the knee, whether it's in part because of the knee or whatever, he can't move that well. And is Drew Bledsoe, even though he got drafted first overall years ago, is that kind of quarterback getting drafted first overall right now with where the game is? I don't think so. We saw it a couple of years with Dwayne Haskins. A similar quarterback, huge arm, couldn't move that well, and he fell to the middle of the first round. And I think things have changed since even then. So a quarterback with that kind of arm talent, but that lack of mobility, that's going to be an issue for NFL teams. Now, he can create space and slide, but it's not – I think teams are going to be wary, plus the medical history. And then there's Malik Willis, who out of all the guys in this class – one of those other seismic events that I talked about, that Bills-Chiefs playoff game where you had Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes doing alien type things, Willis seemed like the guy, or at least seems like the guy in this class that has the most potential to get to that level. Now, maybe it's a 5% chance, maybe it's a 10% chance, maybe there's other guys in this class like Pickett and Ridder that have a better floor, but he might have the best ceiling out of anybody. The question is going to be, can you get him there?
Got it.
The team that drafts him is going to think we can do with him what the Bills did with Josh Allen. And maybe they're right. But if they're not, then you're sort of wondering what he can be. Now, I think he could still be a good NFL quarterback if he doesn't get to his ceiling, but other guys might end up being better if he doesn't get close to his ceiling. And so that's kind of this top 6 in a nutshell.
Okay.
I went with Willis is my one just because.
Me too.
Yeah, and I think Raichele, and maybe you feel the same way. In this draft class, take the swing.
Yeah.
Like just take the swing on the upside. Like, it's not like last year's where maybe the upside guy was a Fields or a Lance, but you knew Trevor Lawrence is gonna be really good. Like, maybe he doesn't have as close to his ceiling as some of these other guys, but it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is different. Like, Pickett could be a good NFL quarterback, but I'm not sure he's more the Mac Jones of this group, right? Where it's like, yeah, he could be a good quarterback, but I don't know about the ceiling. I don't know if what he could potentially be is going to be close to what Willis could potentially be. Literally, and so in this kind of year, you're just kind of like, look, I'll take the swing, right?
Yes. You literally just answered the question I was going to ask you, so thank you. But that's what I was going to ask. Like, I think strongly that Malik Willis is going to be the first QB drafted, but I have been seeing a lot of people talking about Kenny Pickett. So I was like, why would what are they seeing him over Malik Willis? But
I think the case for Pickett over Willis is he's got the safer floor. It's look, if you draft there's a caveat to that, because let's slide Mac Jones in for a second. If you've got Malik Willis, Mac Jones staring you in the face, like you draft Mac Jones, you win a national championship, like comes from Alabama, like accurate guy, like you're probably not going to get fired if it goes south. But if you draft Malik Willis over him, you might get fired if it goes south. There's a potential similar argument at play with Pickett or Willis. The problem is Pickett's also an outlier, right?
Yeah.
You're going to pass on Malik Willis to draft a guy that might have the nice floor, but has the smallest hand since Michael Vick.
Yeah.
And he's not Michael Vick.
Yeah. No.
Kenny Pickett's an athletic quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's not Michael Vick. And I think Kenny Pickett would tell you that too. Like, few quarterbacks since have been. And so he's still an outlier. Mm-hmm. And so do we see a Desmond Ridder slide in potentially by default? Interestingly enough, the league seems more down on Ridder than I think people on the outside, like Seth Galina, Nate Tice, Derek Clausen, other guys that sort of study the position are really high on Ridder, and I can understand why. Because again, the mental side and plays the position extremely well, does some of the things that you need at the position from a mental and a progression standpoint. The accuracy is my sort of hang up with him. Okay. Talking with some people last night about these quarterbacks, there were some people who think, are we doing to Ridder what we did with Herbert, which was, we're not kind of sure about him, so we're going to step away and see what happens, and we're missing the fact that he might be the best guy in this group. I don't know if we're there, but maybe.
Okay.
But it's just, again, I think you and I are on the same page here. In this quarterback group, you take the swing.
Yeah.
And I think we're also starting to see this trend towards, results over process.
Okay.
For years at the position, myself, others, I think we're so dogmatic in, can they read coverages? Can they go through progressions? No. Can you throw the football where it needs to be? Do you know where the nearest defender is, and can you put the football away from him? When the play breaks down and you got a free rusher in your face, can you make a miss and create? The results are starting to matter more than the process of playing the position. And we've talked about Lamar Jackson, right? Yeah. And how Coach Petrino at Louisville said, I had to come up with a second grading system because there were some times where, the check the box type of quarterback play, look at the safeties, first read, second read, third read, check down. Lamar didn't do that because he looked at the safety, saw that first read, saw a tiny little gap, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to take off here, and I'm going to take a 60-yard run.
Yeah.
And he's like, how can I grade that as a negative? He just ran 60 yards. So he came up with this decision and results grading system, which was okay. Your initial decision wasn't what we wanted you to do, but then you ripped off a 65-yard gain. So we'll give you an A+ for that and maybe a C for the decision. Coaches, I think, philosophically are changing as well, where it's like, we used to want the guy that's going to hand in the pocket and make the reads, the Drew Bledsoe. Now we're okay with the Kyler Murray. because we know what that can do. And we know that the way the game is trending. And with the way the game is trending, the guy that paints by the numbers, Kenny Pickett, might wait a little bit longer than the guy that can create, Malik Willis.
Yeah. That's interesting. I like that you brought that up.
Yeah.
I have to do some research on that. But that's true. The game is not the same as it was. You know,
it's not.
Get with the times. I'm sorry.
And that's why I think, look, if this were 10 years ago, we'd be talking about Carson Strong a lot more. And people would be saying, we're worried about the medicals, but he'll throw a brace on, he'll be fine. He can grip it and rip it. When you're talking about guys like Jordan Davis, who at 341 pounds can run a 4.78,
yes.
And I get to, for the Blog of the Boys show, a little plug here. Connor Livesey and I sat down with Nakobe Dean last night, the Georgia linebacker, interviewed him. And he's talking about, he was talking about like the workouts that those guys did on defense and like how athletic they are. It's like, when you've got guys that are 341 pounds that can run 4.78, you better be able to move as a quarterback. Like when you're talking about a guy like Nakobe Dean, who people are saying he's not running the 40 because, he's slow. Watch his pick six against Florida where he hit like 22 miles per hour. Like that dude's not slow. Watch him on that play against Michigan where he tracks the back across the formation on a swing route, chases him down for a tackle for a loss. Don't tell me that dude's slow. Like when you've got guys like that out lining up across the field from you as a quarterback, you better be able to run a 4.5. You better be able to run a 4.4.
Yes,
like,
you won't have a chance.
The game has changed. You got to be able to like move. Like you need some mobility. And so guys like Willis, Ritter, Matt Corral, the guys that can sort of move, even Sam Howell showed that this year. I think the league's going to look at them and say, we need guys like that because if you can't move from the spot, you're dead in the water.
Yeah, I agree. Right there with you.
Yeah.
But we're 23 days away. That's crazy.
That's crazy. We're 24 days away from talking about CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, Raichele.
The fact that it starts like, I'm like, can you guys chill? Like, chill. I saw something. I'm losing it. It was on NFL Live, and I was like, "Huh? Why are we talking about this so early?" But whatever.
No, just wait until the Saturday night the draft ends. You will see mock drafts. I will have watch lists. I mean, my buddy Trevor Sycamore dropped his first mock draft. Like literally, the last pick was turned in last year's draft, and 5 minutes later he tweeted it out. Like his way too early mock draft for the next year. Like people don't stop.
No, they don't stop. They're like on to the next. I need to know. I need to be on to the next.
And I love the way too early mock drafts when it's like you don't even know like who's going to be picking where. Like, but no, it's with respect to the way too early mock drafts. They're a nice watch list resource.
Okay,
like, it gives you some names to know for the next year. Like I've been talking about quarterbacks. Stroud, Young, but Will Levis from Kentucky, Phil Jakovic from Boston College, Spencer Rattler now at South Carolina. Like there are quarterbacks to start thinking about for next year's draft. And as always, somebody will come out of nowhere. We'll be like, who is this guy? This year's version of Kenny Pickett. And so, we'll get guys sort of coming out of nowhere, but we are 23 days away. We could see that light at the end of the tunnel.
We literally can see it. So I am anxious and getting excited, and we are going to keep this draft coverage coming to you guys. We have some really big things in store, so make sure you be on the lookout. Every day we're putting out new content, but that's going to be a wrap. My apologies for this episode of the QB Factory Reboot. Don't forget to rate. Don't forget to leave a review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. Follow me and Mark on social media. You can
follow Raichele. I've said before, I'm going to stop asking nicely. I'm getting mad now. I'm getting mad.
Follow me at Raichele Monique. Follow Mark at Mark Schofield. For all of the content, check out Mark's article that he wrote. Be supportive. But any last words, Mark?
As always, go Eagles.
Go Eagles.